Hi everyone. So today we are gonna be building a Springboot application with JSP's Bootstrap and encryption as its main functionality. So what our application will be doing is that it will receive a string input, then return the SHA-256 version of that string input. So that's basically what we will be covering with this Springboot application. So let's get to it. To start off with creating our application, because we are targeting all levels of knowledge with Spring Boot, we are going to use the startspring.io for people who are using different IDEs to develop. So let's go to start.spring.io to create our application. So to start at the top, the project will be a Maven, Java, then leave the group as it is, change the name to Springboot Encrypt. Change the name to Springboot Encrypt, which will also be the name, the artifact. Leave the description as it is. You're gonna be using Java 8. So we're gonna add two dependencies now, then add the rest later. So for two dependencies, you are gonna add the web and we're gonna add the dev tools. After adding the dependencies, we're gonna generate our application. So our application will be here in our downloads folder. So from our downloads folder, you'll need to import the application into your IDE that you are using. So I will be using the Eclipse IDE for this tutorial. So if you're using IntelliJ or other IDEs, please import the project into your application so that you'll be able to follow. So let's get to it. So after creating your project with startspring.io, you'll need to import that project, as I've said, into your IDE of choice. So I'm using the Eclipse IDE. So after creating your project and importing it, you'll go into the pom.xml file where we will be adding the rest of the dependencies that will be used for our application. So we are gonna add 4 dependencies, as you can see currently. So I've just added them. Let me just zoom in into the dependencies. We have added the guava dependency here. We have added the servlet, the JSP dependency here, and we have also added the Tomcat embedded Jasper here, and we have also added the JSTL dependency here. So this will be the 4 dependencies we will be using in our project. So let's continue building our application and make sure you add these dependencies that they are required for building our application. So the next phase, we will be creating folders that will be used to house the JSP files for our front end of our application. So in src main Java, not Java, resources, we're gonna go inside the resources and create a new folder called meta-inf. So name that folder meta-inf. Then within meta-inf, create a new folder called resources. So we are gonna name this folder resources. After creating this folder of resources, we're gonna create a new folder within resources called web-inf. So after creating web-inf, within web-inf, we're gonna create a new folder and call this folder views. So within this views folder we have just created here, this is where we will be placing our JSP files for this project. So let's just create the index.jsp file. So let's create the JSP file now and name it index.jsp. So you can just create it for yourself within the views folder. So after creating the index.jsp, this will be our index.jsp file right here. This will be the content within the JSP file. So if your IDE or whatever IDE you are using cannot create, just make sure you have this content as the base content for your application index.jsp file. So after creating this file, we are gonna go to the properties file. So in the properties file, we are gonna tell Spring where to find our index.jsp files. So we are gonna say Spring dot mvc dot view dot prefix, and we are gonna define our prefix as /web -inf /views /. So this defines the prefix to where to find our index.jsp file. So now let's define the suffix. Spring dot mvc dot view dot suffix. So this is the suffix we will be using for our JSP files, which will be .jsp. Let me just zoom in so that you'll be able to see. So this is where we tell Spring where to find our JSP files within our application. So it will find them in web-inf views, and the suffix will be .jsp. So after creating our application and making sure that it has everything from the dependencies and also telling Spring where to find our JSP files, so now we are gonna go into src main and create a new package. Name that package as controller. So this will be where we define our controller, which will return the views to our front end. So after creating the controller package, let's create a new class and name that class text controller within that controller package. So the text controller will be our controller class, which will be responsible for returning the views to the front end. So annotate it with add controller. So after using the add controller annotation, let's define a method that will return our index.jsp file here. So let's say public model and view show index page. So we're gonna define our endpoint that when we hit this endpoint, it will return us our index.jsp file. So this is a get mapping used to retrieve our index.jsp file. So within our controller, let's say model and view, let's call it model, which is equals to new model and view. So our model and view will be responsible for returning everything as a model to the view. So with the model then on views, let's say model.set view name, and set the view name to the name of our index.jsp file. So our name of our index.jsp file is index.jsp. So here we will return index as our view that we would like to return. So let's return model. So when we hit our base endpoint here, we will return our index.jsp file to the view. So within our index.jsp, let's just define a header and say welcome to Springboot. So after saying welcome to Springboot, we need to test our application to see if it works. So let's run Springboot encrypt and analyze our server logs here if it's starting. So started Springboot encryption application. So when we hit our endpoint should return our index.jsp file here. So let's say http://localhost:8080/. As you can see, welcome to Springboot has been defined. So it means our application is working. So we were able to return our index.jsp that we have just defined. So let's go to Bootstrap and get our Bootstrap stuff to be able to create our application front end. So let's say get Bootstrap. So as you can see, I'm using the embedded browser so that I don't change between views that much to get people confused as to what I'm doing. So in get Bootstrap, we are gonna copy the CSS, control copy, and place it in the header of our application. Then also we're gonna copy this, the bundle, the popper and bootstrap.js, then place it at the bottom of our body tag here. So the bootstrap is within and ready to go. So let's start off with building our front end. So let's create a div which will be our container div. Save and give it a class which is equals to container. But before everything, also we need our JSTL tags. We need our JSP JSTL tags. So let's go to, we need Oracle JSTL tags. So let's code sample for JSTL tags is this one. So you need to have it within your JSP page. So let's go to our index.jsp and place this at the top. So this is for our JSTL. So for you to see it, it is this one. So make sure you have it in your JSP file so that we will be able to have JSTL syntax within our JSP page. So make sure you have it, and you have the Bootstrap CSS, the popper min.js, and the Bootstrap min.js. So let's continue building our application, and we need to create another div here, and we need to align our div in center position. So let's see how this looks. Let's restart our application. And see how our JSP looks. Let's go to HTTP localhost 8080/. So as you can see, it is aligned within the center. So welcome to Springboot. So we need to create a form that will submit the text. Say form form will have a class which is equal to text minus center border minus light p padding minus 1. Then we have action, which will be the endpoint for our post, and have it at submit text, and the method will be post, which will be the method we'll be using to submit our forms. So we need to have another div. So this div, give it a margin, a class margin bottom of 3, then add a label. So this is where we'll be submitting our text. So give it a label and provide text to encrypt. Then say the label is for text input, and give it a class which is equal to form minus label. Then we need to provide our input type. Say input, then say type is equal to text. Then give our input an ID of text input, and give it a name of text input. Text input. So after giving it a name of text input, we need to give it a class also. Let's give it a class of form control, and give it a placeholder of text to encrypt. So this will specify the text to encrypt, Then also we need a button to submit our form, obviously. So our button is get SHA -256, and the class of our button will be btn -info and btn -block and give it an margin of y for 2, and our type of button will be a submit button. So let's go and see how our form looks. And where is that? Let's restart everything. Okay, as you can see, our form looks good. Let's just remove this welcome to Springboot and set the title to Java cryptography, and let's see again. Let's restart or save and restart. As you can see, provide text to encrypt, get SHA-256, and everything else is okay. So let's create another div which will carry the output of our SHA-256 encryption. So let's say div and align the div to center also. So within our div here, we need to create another form for our text area, even though this form will not be submitting any data. It will be for our text area that will receive the data. So let's say label, and say the label is for output, and class is equal to form minus label. Then this is SHA-256 output. Then we need a text area and provide rows of 5 and 60. So the name of our text area, let's give it an ID of output, and a name of output. So we have provided our text area which will house our output. So let's see how it looks now. Okay, SHA-256 output form, and let's go and see where we went wrong. So with our form, let's say class is equal to form minus control to see if our bootstrap is kicked in. So our text area is fine. So let's say our text area will be a read only text area. So let's say read only. Let's close our text area. So our text area will be a name, ID, then class, from minus control. So let's see. As you can see how our text area looks now. So let's just remove the form control from here. Now everything looks perfect. So our output will be shown here. Our input will be from here.